We're all good? Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call the Pelham Board of Education meeting of April 7th to order. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2.4 is the reiteration of executive session motions. Sue.
I knew you were going to ask
Oh,
me
I
that.
have it.
Oh, no, I got
Okay.
it. Hang on. I just have too many papers in here. The board met in executive session tonight to discuss matters leading to the employment of a particular person, to discuss the employment history of a particular person, and to discuss board development.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Board of Education meeting. I hope everybody enjoyed a restful school vacation and a happy Passover and/or Easter to those who celebrated. This spring, the main priority before us is the safe return of students to additional in-person learning. We are looking forward to the full-time in-person return of our elementary students on Monday, April 12th. A little later this evening, we will hear about plans to bring students back at the secondary level for more in-person learning. We are excited to see what the remaining school year will look like for our students and families. We are also going to hear a little bit more about the budget from Mr. Rickey this evening. As a reminder, the board is scheduled to adopt the 2021-22 budget at our meeting on April 21st. Then, on May 5th, we will hold the mandated budget hearing, and then the community will vote on the school budget and elect 2 members to the Board of Education on Tuesday, May 18th. Last night, we received some really good news out of Albany that the legislator and governor have agreed to fully fund foundation aid over the next 3 school years. For those who don't know, foundation aid is the primary source of state funding for schools in New York, and it's allocated based on a formula. For the past decade or so, the state had frozen the amount of aid given to school districts, and as a result, we were receiving only about half of what was owed to us under the state's formula, meaning we were underfunded by more than $3 million. Fully funding foundation aid has been among the biggest priorities in the board's advocacy efforts over the past several years. As a member and chair of the Community Engagement and Advocacy Committee for the past 4 years, I'd like to thank all of the community and board members who have served on this committee with me. I would also like to thank all of our residents who took the time to email our elected officials and the governor about this issue. Pelham, according to our state representatives, is notorious for its community support of our advocacy efforts. To that point, I'd like to thank Assemblywoman Amy Paulin and State Senator Alessandra Biaggi, who are also deserving of our thanks as they've continued to work hard on behalf of our district. This is an area where I think the continued attention we have collectively put into this issue will really pay off for our schools and community into the future. These days, good news goes a long way, so I'd like to share a little bit more good news, probably stealing a little thunder from Mr. Rickey. Since we met last, the business office has officially moved into 314 Pelhamdale Avenue. A couple of years ago, the district had purchased that property both to expand the outdoor space at Colonial and to provide office space where administrators and support staff could relocate when the renovations to create more classroom space in the high school begin. We're glad to see that that house is now fully in use, and we're very thankful to our facilities department who are able to work on the interior of the house and make it suitable for our offices. So in a year when the term has taken on a new meaning, it certainly feels like things are starting to feel a little bit more normal. And now, I would like to move on to section 3, which is approval of the minutes. 3.1 is approval of the regular meeting, March 24th, 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks. I saw John's hand and Ben has a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 4 is administrative and committee reports. 4.1 is the superintendent's report.
Okay, good evening. Nice to see everyone tonight on this beautiful, beautiful almost summer night. Really excited tonight to come to be here with you as it's just coming off the heels of spring break, which I think was wonderful for lots of us to get away, get a break, some downtime, and a little rest, which was a nice thing, especially now as we come back to the home stretch of the school year, what has been an incredible school year. So we do hope everyone had that break. We're looking forward to ending this year strong. As you're aware, travel guidance changed during the spring break. Timing has been everything over the last year. So during the spring break, that changed, which was great in that it, certainly released some of the restrictions around traveling, enabled staff and students to return back to school. However, we do encourage families to continue to make safe choices as we finish out the spring and into the fall. The more that we can follow those recommendations and make good choices, the more we're going to continue to be able to keep our schools open, especially as now in these next few weeks we're going to be heading into having more students in the classroom. I think it just mathematically, the more you put in, if we have exposures, you do increase the risk of quarantines. So we're certainly are going to be attentive to that and doing everything we can to keep that at a minimum, and everything families can do to help us work on that is much appreciated. We also want to encourage our students and our parents to continue to engage with our surveillance testing program. We had a really good week of testing the week before the break, and as we come back now, this is our strong chance to get a good baseline of our COVID cases within the school, inside of the school community, which have been very, very small. I'm sure Julia's going to touch on that. And we want to keep it that way. So it's really important that we continue with the engagement with the testing as we plan for and then begin to bring our students back to full-time instruction. But before we go into the full-time instruction discussion, a couple more things. I just want to thank Pelham United for hosting the recent Stop Asian Hate rally. I'm so sorry I could not be there. I know that there were members who were there, and I'm really just proud of our graduates and our current students who are putting their passions and their beliefs into action through supporting, organizing, and putting on these important rallies in our community. And we definitely support their efforts and will continue to work side by side to stand against all forms of hate in our schools, along with our community. Kudos to our high school students, too, for a huge amount of accomplishments. You all may not have realized it, but when Mrs. Clark was here, she was a fanatic about sending me, she called her brag sheet every month. She's not here, so I don't have my brag sheets anymore. But thank you to Dr. Callahan and Mr. Hodge for passing on some great things that I want to share with everyone tonight to celebrate our students. We've had a lot of recent accomplishments in the STEM world, so congratulations to Dylan Hofflich, Ann Liu, and Timothy Lyons, who were among the top scoring students in this year's Westchester Interscholastic Math League. This is part of our math team. They have been selected to represent Pelham as members of the Westchester All-County Math Team and take part in the New York State Mathematics League competition on Saturday, April 17th. Good luck to them at this virtual event. Our science research program. Last month, our science research students competed in the Westchester Science and Engineering Fair, also known as WESF, which was held virtually this year. Students from over 40 schools submitted more than 600 projects. The top 20 projects from WESF move on to the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, the most prestigious pre-college science fair in the world. Two Pelham students, Pelham Memorial High School students, Brett Bober and Lucia Lavelli, were top individual projects in environmental science and will participate in the virtual ICEF from May 16th through May 21st. It's an incredible accomplishment. PMHS also had the top team project in the entire fair. And as a result, Jack Doherty and Daniel Lucevic will also attend ICEF. That is huge. If any of you remember seeing the film Science Fair a few years ago, it was about this competition. So it's just incredible to see not only one, but 4 of our students participating. In addition, those same 2 students qualified for the International Genius Olympiad from this year's WESF competition. Ann Liu, computational biology, and Caroline Garufi in neuroscience will represent Pelham at this prestigious science competition. We're proud of the over 40 science research entries into WESF this year and all of our research students. It was particularly challenging for them and their amazing mentors to compete this work during lockdowns and the pandemic. Despite these challenges, we had one of the best showings of our program's history. So out of adversity comes opportunity, and our folks rose to that. So thank you again, as always, to Mr. Beltekis and Mr. DeBello for spearheading science research in Pelham Memorial High School, and to all of our students and their teachers and parents for their support. A very special thanks to Amplify the PEF and to the Board of Education and to the administration for supporting science and science research in our schools. And thanks to Dr. Callahan, who also serves as a mentor. He doesn't mention that because he's very humble in that way, but his leadership of the program directly with students and supporting our teachers is definitely a part of why our program is what it is. So congratulations to those students and their teachers. And then in the academic and athletic realm, we're really exciting this year. Mr. Hodge is doing a great job of keeping our teams and coaches connected with the athlete scholars or scholar athlete programs. So as part of the winter report that the board will be seeing coming home this week, listing of our, actually came home last week, our scholar athletes. So the following teams qualified this year for Scholar Athlete Team Award, and to qualify, you have to have 75 of the team's roster having earned a 90% GPA or better as a team. So, girls volleyball, girls varsity basketball, a 98.2 GPA total. Girls ice hockey, 98.2, amazing. Boys varsity indoor track, 97.2. Girls varsity indoor track, 97.1. Varsity cheerleading, 95.5. Varsity boys basketball, 95. Varsity boys swimming, 94.1. Cumulative as a team. That is incredible for our student athletes. In addition, 102 of our individual students were listed as individual scholar athletes, award winners, who will receive state pins for their qualifications. I'm not going to read all of them because we don't have the time tonight. Those, I believe, are listed on the state athletic website. And I think we have a press release that was issued out as well. So really, congratulations. We'd love to see how our students are able to balance those challenges and excel in all areas. And so with that, I want to transition to probably the big story of the night, which is our follow-up from last week's discussion on our last board meeting's discussion about returning to full-time in-person instruction. Even though it's been 2 weeks, it's only been 4 school days, but we've accomplished a lot in those 4 school days. So I'm really proud of our team. Our administrators in particular have worked just nonstop to bring about the information that we're going to share with you tonight. It's been a lot of great decision-making, a lot of hard work going into getting this information, thanks to my cabinet, who also have been a big piece of leading that work and following through on delivering. And if you came in through the Courtyard Ingalls area, you saw some big white deliverables today. We got 2 30 by 30 tents out on Ingalls Field that are going to help us to deal with our overflow lunch and inclement weather day. So nice work, Jim. Thank you. John Condon, he was here earlier. Really excited about that. And those are going to carry us, I think, till the end of the year. So really quickly want to hit some of this. Some of this is familiar. We just wanted to remind you of our priorities that have been our priorities since the beginning and all through this effort. Holistic wellness of our students and staff, quality curriculum in an equitable manner being delivered to our students, and of course aligning with requirements, guidelines, and the most recent scientific research. And I should say we continue to see more research coming out that is continuing to support the direction we're moving in. These were the challenges that we faced specifically at the secondary buildings. The elementary, we shared our plan with you last time, but these were the things that we've been trying to tackle over the last finishing up the details of it these last 4 planning days. And where we landed really depended a lot on the data. We needed to find out how many students plan to return. So our buildings had to do a lot of follow-up to get some clarity on this, but the presentations, what you see on the left is the middle school. In blue is the percentage of students that plan to return to full-time in-person instruction, or would like to return to full-time in-person. In red is those that are choosing full virtual instruction, and in yellow is those responses that we did not have as of last week. So middle school, you're looking at about, and I can't see the numbers real well from here, but about 10%, 10 or 11% that choose full virtual, and very small number of non-responsive. So for planning purpose, we assumed those, we had to plan as if those students were coming back because we're talking logistics, space, furnishings. So about 10% staying home, the remainder planning to return. On the right, you see the high school, and about the same thing. In red is our full virtual choice, so that's about 10% there as well. We had a larger number of non-responsive, but again, planning for about 90% that would like to come back. I think the thing this does verify is that there is not a, I know there was concerns from some of the surveys about there being more people wanting to remain hybrid than what people felt like the survey was not showing that accurately. As I said last time, I believe we cross-checked that with responses and still got a strong percentage of parents saying that yes, even given the choice between hybrid and full return at 3 feet, there was a strong majority that did want to return. So I think this verifies that as well. So you see 90% are expecting to come back. So in planning that, we had to look separately at the two buildings. With 11% of the students remaining full virtual, we were able to get furniture moved back in. We've measured those rooms and remeasured those rooms and measured them again, and depending how you measure them, who measures them, if you're going point to point, desk to desk, chair to chair, mouth to mouth, you can come up with different numbers. So the true, what's the phrase? Proof is in the pudding. When you put the furniture in the room, that's when you finally figure out what you're able to do. So that's really the point that we got to. So you may have, well, I know folks have not been in the buildings this year, which you probably didn't see that I will tell you about. We had moved, I think it was about 120, 140 desks out of classrooms in the high school and into the cafeterias so that we could have students sitting separately at 6 feet distance, rows, same direction. But we need those desks back in classrooms now. The bulk were from the high school, but some from the middle school. So now if you go into our cafeterias, we now have card tables with chairs as the new lunch tables. The great part is we will be able to repurpose those for AP, SAT, and AP exams, because we used to rent those every year. Now we purchase them to get us through lunch for the remainder of the year, and now we'll own them and repurpose for testing. So all the furniture now has been moved back into the classrooms. John Condon and his team worked throughout the break on this, as well as moving the business office into 314 Pelhamdale. It's a tremendous amount of work, so they're still finishing up some furnishings being moved out. That being the case, getting desks back in the room, also having been able to obtain tents now for Ingalls Field to help us with lunch overflow, especially on inclement weather days, that really gave us some key pieces of the puzzle that we needed to know. And with that, I feel like I'm missing a slide.
Yeah, there's one slide. The punchline.
The punchline. That's what we're missing is the punch. Can you go back to the other
I think
slide?
you just need to go back a
Alex?
slide to the middle school plan.
All right. So the punchline.
There's such a
If you get so close to this, you miss the most obvious thing in front of you. With 11% staying home, with furniture back in the classrooms, and with tents to help us solve our lunch problems, we believe and we are able at this point to say that all middle school students who want to return are able to return 5 days a week. That's the great news, and that's, I think, different than we were even on Friday when I shared the news with the board. Getting back to school in this week, we did our triple checking, and we're at that point where we can confidently say all middle schoolers who want to return at this point will be able to return within and still be at least 3 feet distance in classrooms. So moving on to the high school. We've got, again, about 10%. In doing our measurements here, though, the high school is the older building, smaller classroom size, biggest kids, and still trying to aim at, keeping at least needing to stay at maintaining 3 feet distance. So in doing those measurements, we are not, at this point, don't believe that we can unfortunately meet the 100% request as we were in the middle school. So what we've developed is a more robust cohort model that we're planning to implement, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We have identified some students, and you may remember the early regulations that recommended school districts prioritize higher needs populations, special programs. So we have already done some of that. We're going to be expanding that group of special student populations and programs identified to come every day at the high school. So there will be some students doing that. All other students will now, instead of coming 2 or 3 days a week, they'll be increased to 3 or 4 days a week on the new cohort model. The nice thing that I hope you'll see is that we're keeping it anchored in the current model. So it's not going to be a significant change for families. If you were cohort A before, you're still cohort A, that's still Monday, Tuesday, we're adding another day. If you were B, you were Thursday, Friday, you're still B, we're going to be adding a Monday or a Tuesday. So it keeps some stability and predictability. Also, if, worst case scenario, we start to see cases and we need to pull back on distance, we can go back to the model that's been working for us all along. So it gives us some flexibility. We do still have some furniture to be moving into the middle school, into the high school. So we're going to continue to look at that and see if we can push the envelope even further. But again, we need to be sure to stay at the 3 feet. So that's the kind of the concept of where we're going. Alex, I think if you can go on, okay. Don't be scared by this. This is what I was just talking about. So at the high school, in dark blue, you see, and this is, we joke that Julia is kind of our own Rain Man. This is her scheduling brain from her assistant principal days in LA. I can't even tell you, she did this in like 3 minutes. It was crazy. But you see across the top the dates of the weeks that are left in the school year. So, 4/19 through 23, 4/26. So what that is, it's laying out the weeks that are remaining in the rest of the school year. In dark blue, the first row of solid dark blue that goes all the way across, those are the students that are prioritized to come in every day. But then below that, you see blocks of, it's hard to read because of the color, but you see A1, A2, B1, B2. So the dark blue in those boxes represents the cohorts that currently exist, cohort A and cohort B. What we're going to be doing now is subdividing those so that on cohort A days, both cohort A will still continue to come, but in light blue below that, you see half of cohort B will now also come. Then the next, on Monday, half of cohort B will now come on Tuesday. And then it works the same way when you get to Thursday, Friday. B is in both Thursday, Friday, and then in light blue, half of A comes Thursday. On Friday, the other half of A comes. We are going to do the rotation on Wednesdays as well. I didn't get to update this. The administration at the high school just finalized that today to see that we can do it pretty close to even, not exact, but pretty close.
Meaning that you've updated it so that half of the cohort comes on the half day?
Even on the Wednesdays.
Okay.
Yep.
Not
Yep.
as shown there. But.
Correct. So there'd be a little bit more added to what's shown here. But that's the general idea. And again, there's stability to that. So if you're B1, your extra day is always now a Monday. So you're a Monday, Thursday, Friday. If you're B2, you're Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And with A, it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Friday. And you might get an extra Wednesday thrown in as well. So more stability. You're going at least 3, sometimes 4 days a week. That we know that we have the space to accomplish. And it does sound confusing, and I think we're going to come up with ways that we're going to communicate the schedule. It'll probably literally be a hang it on the refrigerator, what day do I come kind of approach. But we're confident that we can do this in a way that makes sense and helps. That gets us closer to, right now we've been doing about a 50% of students in. This gets us close to about 70% of students in at any given point in time, which is, I think, a great step forward.
And are the cohorts split by alphabetically?
Alphabetical.
Okay, so
Yep,
you're
I think we're
going
still going
halfway through cohort A and
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that's probably how it's going to be communicated out, is A through whatever is going to be A1,
Yeah.
G through whatever. We're working on that, and they did try to attend to that being as close to even cohorts as possible. And we know it doesn't always break out evenly when they go from class to class, but it's the start.
About what percentage? You said there was some kids that are going back 5 days. What
Yeah.
percentage, roughly?
20. That's right. Thank you. So that's a base level of about 20% of students that will be in every day.
So we have about 900 in the high school altogether?
Ish. Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
9:20, okay.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me of how many are going to be in that group, but it was approximately 20% that'll be 5 days a week. And then the cohorts, the remaining students in the cohorts will stay on this new rotation to get us at about 70% in each day.
So the 3 cohorts a day that are in each day,
Would be about 50%. So 20% are in every day, an additional 50% on top of that on any given day.
okay.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, if someone who opted to say full virtual, I don't know if that was a big change. Was there a big change in the full virtual in this last go-around?
I don't think there was a big shift out. I do think we had a lot of students come back in who
Is that
had
right?
been out. That's probably the bigger shift.
So we have fewer full virtual in this
Yes.
scenario? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So now that, I know that for the high school, now 16 plus can be vaccinated. Does anything change if students are fully vaccinated for that, for those students?
We haven't tackled that question yet.
Okay.
You know, I know that's a question that will come. I think right now it's still a space issue.
Yeah.
So we're gonna watch it. I mean, I think that's the best we can do is watch and revisit that as we see how the vaccines roll out. They just became eligible now, so if students got vaccinated this week, we're still talking a month out. That gives us some time to take a look at it. And that's the other piece, you know, I would say at the high school, we're still getting all the furniture back in is step one. We'll talk about the timeline in just a minute. But that gives us a little bit more time to assess the space. We could, you know, if we think that's all we can do to start with, we can bring them in and then we can see if there is another step forward we could take.
Okay.
I think the challenge at the high school is 16 plus gives you basically your juniors, some of your juniors and all of your seniors.
Yeah.
But you still have 9th and 10th grade that are not. So the degree that there's mixing of the grade levels might complicate,
Right. Okay.
you know.
And then I had another
Space.
question. I know you touched on it a little bit, but there was that extra question asked in the commitment
Yeah.
survey about separate from anything else, if you
Right.
could choose between full-time in person or the existing hybrid.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really, I don't think it was
No, I didn't
there.
have it
And
on
so
there.
what was that number?
My recollection is that was still somewhere around 60 to 70%. I don't have that number in
Full-time,
front of me.
in person.
That would have
That would have still gone full-time.
still gone full-time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
So essentially, we're having a hybrid.
So it's a different version of the hybrid, yes.
So all those people were unhappy about not having a hybrid option?
I
Well,
think it's a
the-
win-win. Because you
Except
still
I
get the
think the
hybrid.
concern was the spacing between students,
Yeah.
and no matter what, the goal is to bring more students back, so they are going to be inherently closer together.
Yeah,
But
so it's kind
it
of a
is-
halfway in between.
Yeah.
It's not everybody in, which I know was a fear of super closeness, so it is closer.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the proof's going to be in the pudding. We get the furniture in, we bring the students in, we'll see where we stand at that point, and if there's an additional move that can be made to bring more back before the
So
end.
the only thing that's going to relax that is the 3-foot rule goes away.
Yeah, I think vaccines and the relieving of a 3-foot.
I don't know the vaccines are going to help, but
Yeah. And, you know, I think, to be honest, I think most of us hope that by the fall, we're in a position where all those restrictions are gone and maybe
Yeah.
masking is the primary mitigation strategy and 100% are back in. So we don't know yet, so that will be the next conversation for the task force once we roll this out and get the students back in, revisit things with the task force, and then turn our attention towards September. Yep. So timelines. We've already talked. Elementary, as you know, is starting back in on Monday, this coming Monday, the 12th. What we're looking at at the secondary is for this everyday group that's been prioritized and identified at the high school level. We want to get them starting to come back in next week as well. Because again, it's about 20%. And we want to do that just at the high school because the rest of the group is waiting a little bit longer. So we thought we could start there. With middle school, we would like to begin all grade levels full-time in person for those who want to come back on April 19th. So instead of staggering in by grade levels, we feel confident that we can bring them all in at once. They've all been in the building, just not in the building together this year. So the other piece I would add, the reason we're not phasing in the everyday group specifically at the middle school on the 12th is throughout that week, they've already started now, but even continuing throughout next week, for students who have been on full virtual who are planning to come back in, guidance counselors, administrators have been meeting with, and psychologists, clinicians have been meeting with those families, talking with them and transitioning them in independently, one-on-one. So that work is ongoing this week. We wanted to allow them to continue with that work because they're kind of in a good routine with it. And we wanted to give them space to do that for next week. So high school everyday group will start on the 12th, along with the elementaries starting on the 12th. Middle school will return all in on the 19th. And then we're looking at the high school returning, again, all 4 grade levels in this modified cohort plan on April 26th. Instead of doing a phase-in, we feel we can do all in. That will also, waiting to the 26th, gives us kind of the week to focus on the elementary, focus on the middle, get us to high school. That will get us past any post-holiday travel bumps in cases as well. Certainly the 12th, we did that intentionally for that reason. We know the older kids have had, where we've had more cases, so giving us that extra week is going to help from that perspective. And then there's a lot going on. State testing, as Steve mentioned, in the middle of all this, the state's got, this will give us some ability to navigate around state testing some at the middle school level, navigate around the Olympics at the high school. They've got a great plan built for the Olympics so that they can carry that out. It's built on our current cohort models and schedule. So this will get us kind of to navigate around all those logistical things so that we can get a good, clean start. The biggest, one of the big important recommendations that came strongly from the buildings was the need to maintain the current bell schedule. And you probably might remember it's a bit of a modified bell schedule. Periods are about 35 minutes long, 5 minutes passing time between classes, and a longer time at the end of the day for academy than we used to have. And those were really key pieces. I think the teachers have really adapted well to the 35-minute instructional period. They're prioritizing curriculum. They're getting done what they need to get done. And certainly with the cancellation of a number of the Regents exams, that's lifted a piece. With AP exams being pushed later in the year, that gives us more time to cover the curriculum. So the instructional period, we feel, is sufficient. With more students in the building, we absolutely need more passing time so we can try to stagger classes again, keep the density in the hallways down. And the biggest piece that we debated was about the academy period. That has been hugely used by both in-person and fully virtual students. And that really is our key support for our fully virtual students. So whereas we have 11% of students remaining fully virtual, we really need to provide that for them. What the administrators and teachers have reported to us that our fully virtual students in particular, many times they can actually check in with 3 different teachers during academy time on a daily basis because there's that dedicated amount of time. So we wanted to maintain that for them because that is the primary support. So that's why we're recommending maintaining that. Maintaining the Wednesdays as we had recommended as well. It's not on the slide, but that is something aligned with the elementary. Nice thing that we're hoping to move forward with, and the tents are going to help us with this too. Band and chorus. If we've got full band and chorus back, they really don't fit in the rooms anymore. So we're going to be moving outside. We're hoping for a nice spring. And we're hoping that they can play and sing instead of hum and just finger along with their music. So they've got, the PEF provided some great safety features for the band. Outside, we're going to have them, we don't know exactly logistics, but I hope our neighbors like early morning music because zero period is probably going to be the band on one field and the chorus on another field every day rehearsing. There's even talk of trying to have some in-person performances outdoors, which would just be amazing. So I spoke to Miss Abe's house about that, and she was really excited and was taking the ball running with some planning there. So you can expect to hear some early morning musical selections. And our clubs are going to be remaining virtual for the time being. That has been working out well. Certainly, if advisors, do want to talk with principals about opportunities for meeting in person and are able to do that in a way that incorporates our virtual students, certainly we'll work with them to make that happen. Continuing with our mitigation strategies as we listed at the elementary schools, we've got an updated percentage on staff vaccinations. As of our return, 59% of staff have received at least one vaccination dose. So the county is continuing to collect that data weekly, so we're hoping that number continues to go up. Alex has designed a fantastic surveillance website testing page, surveillance testing webpage based on recommendations from our task force. So it includes graphs that show our surveillance testing compared to the county testing. It shows the vaccination rates of staff so that we can keep updating that. And just some really, I think, some useful information to help us monitor and help the community in a transparent way be able to see what's going on in the schools compared to what's going on, so we can hopefully those numbers stay nice and low and zero, but to catch any problems that may happen very quickly.
Where is that webpage found? It's on the reopening section of the district webpage?
Yes, it's in the reopening. My computer just decided to restart. It's on the reopening. It's on the reopening page.
Okay.
And as we already talked about, we've got our 2 tents up on Ingalls Field. So, actually, you don't have to go back. I'll just mention it. We're pleased to report all of the fans and air purifiers have been delivered and have been deployed out to the buildings. So those are being pushed out to classrooms at the elementary, so they're in place for Monday. They're in the buildings here, and as our team is getting done with furniture, all those things are going out as well. So we should be primed and ready for those. We are borrowing, thanks to Kristen
Burke.
Thank you. Kristen Burke, who was part of our task force, she was able to connect us with some loaner desks from Mercy. So those are being picked up at the end of the week to help supplement in the middle school. So we feel that we're in good shape with mitigation strategies, furnitures, plans, ready to go. So again, those are the same attendance expectations. We need folks to kind of get back into a more traditional frame of thinking. If you're in person, in school is in session, you are in person in the classroom. If you're not feeling well and you stay home because you're too sick to be in school, then you're taking a sick day. If you're quarantined, things like that, of course, will still allow students to, to access the full virtual, but it's time to kind of bring a little bit more normalcy back to the rhythms of life. So, is that it? Oh, and just reminders of how you can help us. And we did update the family health agreement in line with the newest travel guidance, so that just went out as well. We've already talked about surveillance. That's the plan. So, any questions? Yes, John.
So if I just make sure I understand the scheduling right. So now the high school is back to their hybrid as they were before, correct?
They're right now they're at the same hybrid we were at before, and then starting on the 26th is when
26 is
the
when
new cohort
they
comes.
push the desks together and then they go to the different schedule.
Yes.
So by my calculation, we're actually going to have 80% of the kids back under that in any given day.
I like to underpromise and overdeliver.
Okay. I just think I like 80%.
Julia? Yeah.
I just wanted to share that actually I love our administrators because they watch the board meeting, and when we're talking about something, they'll text us additional information. So I had Beth text me that the students that are coming in are closer to about 25%. So it's a little more than 20% that we had said before, yeah.
Thank you.
And
You love getting corrected, but.
can I ask too, so, obviously, if we could have found a way to bring 100% of our high school students in, that would have been incredible, but as you mentioned, one benefit is because we still have the semblance of our hybrid, if we saw an uptick in numbers, now that we have 100% coming in at the middle school, what would we do in that scenario? If we saw that we had to reduce, we'd go back to our cohort modeling at the middle school if we saw.
Yeah, I think that, I think we could very easily go back into that
Okay.
50% cohort model. If you were cohort A before, you're back to A,
Just
B,
regress
back
right
to
back
B.
to where we were.
Yep, or we could even do the stepped approach, like the modified, like the high school.
Okay.
It would be confusing and a little bit of an adjustment, but I think the structure is there.
Yeah.
And, as I said, we're going to continue, it was all built around the current cohort rotation that's on the schedule now, that's not changing. So it definitely gives us that flexibility.
Okay. I mean, let's hope that's not, but it's nice to know that we have plans in all directions now.
Yep.
So I know that one of the things we were talking about were our seniors and
Yes.
bringing back our seniors. And so given that they are going to still be in a hybrid, are there plans for events and, activities and things for seniors?
Yeah, the Olympics, I know that plan's been developed and is ready to go. And that was developed based on the current cohort model. So that's part of why we're keeping that through that time. There are definitely other events. I don't have the details off the top of my head, but I can certainly ask Mr. Berkowitz to provide an update on what those plans are, because they have been very actively working on that.
I'm sure.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome.
this
And
is,
honestly, again, thanks to the administrative team and the task force, the teachers that helped on that. It's some really complicated stuff and tough. It's a lot of managing of risk, but I think everyone is, they're excited and they're ready to go there, because everyone just misses the kids. It's what we're here about, and sooner we can get them back, the sooner I think life can return to some normalcy. So that ends my
Thank you.
report for tonight. Yeah.
Okay, so this brings us to 4.2, which is Board of Education Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? I did not ask in advance. So do we have any meetings since we met last?
When we have cultural competence, I don't know if there's other board.
I don't think we've had any
Committees?
since we
No?
met
Okay.
last. No.
So the Cultural Competence Committee did meet, and this was the first meeting that the majority of it was spent in the subcommittees. There isn't really anything to say right now substantively about the work of the subcommittees, but I thought it would be helpful to let the community know what those subcommittees were. So the Cultural Competence Committee received a list, and you prioritized, and you got assigned to one of the subcommittees, and they are communications, which is really about communicating, obviously, out to the community. There's a lot of communing going on there. Yes, sorry. Okay, sorry. First subcommittee was communications, which is what you think it is. Curriculum and professional learning, to talk about the, frameworks and really look at everything K through 12. Data analysis, this was something that has come up, that there were gaps in some of the data that we had been collecting that didn't allow us to totally evaluate some of our issues in this area, so they're working on that. Equity policy and hiring and retention practices. So lots of districts are now adopting equity policies. We're looking, I'm on this subcommittee, and the first thing we did was looked at a bunch of different policies and just understood kind of what the options were that were out there already and how we might adjust those to reflect what's going on in our district. And also hiring and retention, which is, of course, something that Steve Garcia has been working on for years. Family and community engagement, so different ways to really bring the community into the process. And then student equity leader empowerment, which is working with, I believe it's middle and high school groups, to see what they can do and how they can kind of work their youthful magic, I guess, among the student body and really help bring that group along. So those are the different subcommittees, and that work will continue, and I'll report back when there's something to say.
And when's the next meeting?
It's once a month, so
Okay.
we just had March, so I guess April. I feel like it's the 17th-ish, something
Okay.
like that.
Of this month.
Yeah, of this 15th.
15th. Yep. Tax day.
Tax day. Do we have any? Okay. 4.3 is Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning. Dr. Garcia.
Hi, yeah, this isn't the obviously the most fun topic, but as Cheryl mentioned, right when we're going to bring back students, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the state is saying that we have to administer the ELA and math exams. So we've been trying to figure out what is the best option for children. because really our biggest concern and what we really want to focus on is not interrupting teaching and learning for the sake of administering tests. So we're trying to really look at how are there times when we have opportunities to give the children and also the parents the option to have their children take the test during a time frame that wouldn't disrupt instruction. That's what our plan is, that's what we're thinking about. But one of the biggest pieces we need to find out is how many parents want their children to actually take the session 1 of an ELA or math exam. So within the week, we're going to be sending out a survey, some information to parents for them to let us know what are your intentions. Traditionally in Pelham, most students take the state exams. This is an unusual year. The only reason why the state is saying you have to administer it is because the federal government is saying that you have to administer it. And I mentioned this at the last meeting, the state is foregoing most of the Regents exams this year for obvious reasons for the pandemic. But like I said, we're just trying to make sure that we're going to find an opportunity. We don't want to disrupt, the great experience where kids are finally coming here full time and then saying, wait a minute, we're going to disrupt 2 hours of your day, 90 minutes of your day, because they are untimed, these exams, to actually administer a part 1 of a test, which we really don't know what the data is going to show or what the data, we don't even know when we're getting the test results back and what they even look like, because it's not a full competent, it's not a battery of exams. It's not session 1, 2, and 3. So that's our dilemma. That's every school's dilemma. Other school districts have been doing the same thing, finding out from parents what is your intention. So we're going to send that out to parents in the next, hopefully, like I said, next few days, so that we can have a better understanding of how many children in 3 through 8 would be coming in to take those exams. And again, the worst part about it is the fact that we're inviting all the children back in K-5 on the 12th, which is Monday. The exams actually would be scheduled to traditionally begin on the 19th. So it's only a week later, and the 19th is when we're inviting all the middle school kids back. So, look, you understand the dilemma. We do have an opportunity in our current schedule when children aren't coming here to learn. We're giving the opportunity for teachers to work in the professional development and also to prepare, and that's those Wednesday afternoons. So we're strongly looking and considering at that opportunity to have children who want to take those exams to come in during those Wednesday afternoons. And certain specific date, and we will share that with the parents as well, so that it wouldn't disrupt the other students in their learning, because you have to understand the logistics of administering state exams means you have all students who may have certain timed conditions, they may have alternative locations. We don't have that space if all the kids are here. Normally, right? We have kids already spaced out, we have rooms already divided. That would really be a big challenge. So we want to kind of eliminate that challenge for us. And like I said, we have an opportunity, we have a gap in the weekly schedule, so we're considering that. But first, we really want to find out how many students this would impact, who wants to take these exams. And again, there'll be a makeup day the next day if a child, decides to change their mind, they want to take it the next day. So there'll be opportunities, but I think the key things are, how do we minimize disruption to the school day when we're coming back for the first time? And really that key concept of flexibility or choice, because the state has enabled us for the first time to really tell parents that, you have a choice. So that is coming out hopefully within the next less than a week, and we can get that data to the parents and make an informed choice for the parents and for the school district. More to come soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
So I can't imagine that the results are going to mean that much for districts if there's an unevenness in terms of who's taking the test, and even for its typical benchmarking in terms of for teachers. It would be, I'm imagining that it's more about the experience of taking a test.
Yeah. There's a compliance piece to this.
And some benchmarks for families.
Right. There's a compliance piece to it because the federal government's saying so.
Yeah.
We don't know what it's going to look like. It's basically, to be honest, the state already said, it's part 1. If you're a 3rd grade taking the ELA exam, you're looking at 3 reading passages and 18 multiple choice questions. That's it. However, that's 60 to 90 minutes. I don't know what we're getting from that. So the rest of the exam is not being administered. And in math, if you're a third grade child, it's in the Math 3 exam, it's 19 multiple choice questions. That's it. So again, I don't know what we're getting to get out of it. We don't know when that data is coming back to us, and it really wouldn't give us an informed information about how children are progressing. We do have that benchmark data. We have the Ames Web data. We're going to administer it again in the spring. That's really what we've been using. It's nationally normed, and that's been our key benchmark. That's what most districts do. They use like the NWEA exam. They use Ames Web. They use some other product, but at least it's given us some sort of sense to measure us, to measure the children and their progress. This will not, unfortunately,
Right.
especially that they didn't even offer them last year. So it's a compliance thing, and we just don't want to immediately go into the test prep zone as well.
Right.
Kids are coming back, make learning fun, really kind of make sure we understand how they're feeling social emotionally, because social emotionally, the first thing we shouldn't be doing is saying, go take this test. We need it, yes. We need to find out where they are, but unfortunately, the lining of this is really complicated, and it's probably not, it's ideal, not an ideal situation as a parent. I mean, personally, my kids don't go to school here, but my child's homework already has been do these practice questions for homework. That's not here, somewhere else, but it's what we're kind of like, drilled to do at times. So we don't want to fall into that situation. I'm not going to say that's not going to exist here, but there's a reality to it. But it's unfortunate. That's the situation. So we're going to give parents, we're going to send them a letter. It's going to come from the building principal and myself, and it's going to explain our thoughts. Take a survey, let us know, and then we'll tell you when it's going to happen and the procedures around it.
You're providing a perfect segue to the whole child, being mindful of
Yes.
how we welcome our students back and not just putting them right in the middle of a stressful situation. Ms. Chung.
So I wanted to follow up on the question you had earlier regarding students when they start getting vaccinated. I think what I anticipate is that the contact tracing is going to be minimized, hopefully, and less kids will have to quarantine. I've already had a couple of parents that reached out to me and said, my child just got, vaccinated. And so what's going to be important for us is, if we do have to do contact tracing, we're going to be reaching out to parents to, say, please, if you have tested positive within the last 90 days, or obviously if you've been fully vaccinated, then they have to let us know, and we'll take them off the list. But we need, unfortunately, I still do need a copy of the positive test result and probably a copy of the vaccination card. That's kind of the CDC card that I think we all got when after we got the second shot. So we're going to need proof of either vaccination or that they tested positive in the last 90 days for us to take them off of our quarantine list. So I just want to make sure the parents are aware of that. We're doing the same thing with our teachers as well, teachers and staff. When they are identified as a close contact, and they let me know that they've been vaccinated, I ask them for a copy of it because we have to make sure that we have it on file just in case we ever have to show it to, Department of Health, or we just need some backup information. So we are doing that. In terms of the rapid testing, I think it's been going pretty well. As Dr. Champ had mentioned, the week before spring break, we did get to over 160 students. And so that's beyond the 5% that we were targeting. So hopefully we'll be able to maintain that. This week is going to be a little bit challenging because we didn't have a short Wednesday, and so we have less kids after school, and we only have 4 days. So we may not hit the 150, but I think after this week, I think for the next 7 or 8 weeks, it's going to be 5 full-day weeks. So we will have the short Wednesdays where we should be able to have enough students test. But I still do need elementary school parents to continue to sign up. And I really would like for different parents to sign up so that we're not testing the same student. So I just checked our pick-a time, and I saw that we do have spots open still in April, so elementary parents out there, please make sure to sign up your students. And I think what's been helpful with the middle and high school is we ask for the consent, and we've been just scheduling students. And majority have been coming, so that's been helpful. So I also encourage the secondary parents to also, if you have not sent your consent in, please do so that we can add you to the list, and we want to get as many different students as possible in our rapid testing program. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Ricky, Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities.
Hi, thank you, and good evening. A couple of the items I was going to talk about have already been mentioned this evening, which is fine. They're good things to talk about, so I'll just touch on them a little bit
I stole
briefer.
your good news, sorry.
Exactly, good news travels. Obviously, we've been getting ready for full-time instruction. Our facility staff has done a tremendous job getting all the fans in place, our air purifiers, tables for the cafeteria, desks were getting picked up and delivered, working with Kristen Burke, our local community member. We certainly are grateful for that. We have new desk barriers, fully transparent desk barriers for the elementary students. They are stuck somewhere in Nyack, but they're in state, so that's a good sign. And Dr. Champ has offered to go out and get them. But I've seen what she drives, and I don't know how she's going to fit them in a car. Tents, as we've said, I'll say it again. The 2 tents, we set them up today. We were able to go out, again, through our purchasing requirements. We fell below those biddable limits. Gratefully, we reached out and got 3 written quotes, which is great. We did everything we needed to do. We expect to have them up through the end of the school year. So kind of exciting. It's nice. It's a nice step forward, and they look good when you drive by too. They catch your eye. Our capital project's been moving along nicely. Yesterday, our quiet project at Prospect Hill got a little bit louder. We had what we thought could have been a surprise, and I think everybody did what they should have done when they weren't sure. Somebody unearthed something. They took a picture, they showed it to somebody, and they said that could be something dangerous. Fire department was called, police department came. The children have already been evacuated from the building for the day, or they left for the day. And great work with the Pelham Fire Department, Pelham Police Department, and the Westchester County Bomb Squad. They came out, they took a look at everything. Again, they took an x-ray of what that suspicious item was. It was kind of a concrete item with some wires going into it and springs. Once we had the x-ray, and county police were able to pretty quickly determine at that point that it was non-explosive. So again, grateful to do it. We hate having anything happen like this, but again, I think as we look at it, it was good to see that everybody did the right thing. We, of course, are going to be cautious, and that's the approach that we took. So that worked out nicely. Last week, we had the bids come back for the extra facade work on the front of the high school. We are really excited because 2 of the bids came in at really great prices. And then KG&D and Triton have begun interviewing those bidders, and they have rechecked their work and have had some mathematical errors. So the real low bids, unfortunately, are not going to survive. But we did have 11 bidders, which is really a great pool of bidders, and we think we're going to have some viable options. We're waiting for a letter of recommendation for bid award from KG&D. At that point in time, I'd like to work with the bond steering committee so that you can kind of update everybody with where we are on the project and final recommendation to the board for award of that work. Sorry, I wrote some things down and now I'm going blind. The work at Glover has continued. The pitching mound at Glover needed to be replaced with where the mound was. It took some damage over the summer. That's been fixed. I drove by it today. Looks like all of the items keeping people off the mound have been taken away, so I think we're in place and we're ready for play. I mean, I know we're ready for the beginning of the high school season, which I think begins next week. So we're excited to have the use of that field. It's really exciting. It looked like it was done. The problem we had was it's a rubber sand mix on the infield, and we only had rubber on the infield, and it really made a lot of play on the ball. The rubber sand mix helps dampen the play of the ball, and we wanted to make sure we got it right for our students for the beginning of their school year. So I know they had a tournament over the break through the Recreation League. They played on Field B or C. It's still a beautiful field. All 3 of the fields are really beautiful. But it just, I know it takes a little bit of the shine off because they didn't get to play on the main field. So we're excited for them to have that season begin. The bullpen and the batting cages, that work is substantially completed as well. Last I checked, they had to complete the netting. That may have gone up. That's really on target to go up on time too. So really exciting work. We're working on our lacrosse bounce back wall as well. That's lost somewhere. So we got some installation hardware last week. We have not yet received the larger panel. So we're waiting on that larger panel to get delivered. There must be some traffic jam somewhere in Pennsylvania or the Midwest, but we're going to clear it up and we want to get these items. So we're excited to have it happen, which is really terrific. Whoops, excuse me a minute. I'm going to page 2, so this is good. We're moving through things. Hutchinson's been working really at a steady rate. Again, the building is energized. The furniture orders just about ready to go out, which is terrific. Working with the numerous furniture vendors to make sure we have everything. There's a lot of stuff that goes into filling a new building, so I know it's taking a lot of Dr. Garcia's time and Tricia Fitzgerald, our principal, and we're certainly grateful for them. Finished product's going to be really great. So we are on target, and it's still on target for that September 1st opening, and again, very exciting. And now I know we've also started to work with teachers and staff to ask them to kind of purge their items, think about their move, and how we're going to get everything over so we can clear out the existing building. So that's a nice step to start focusing a little bit more on that. Dr. Champ mentioned the business office moved, which is really a lot of stuff to happen over the course of a vacation. Although now, we were in the high school, we saw a lot of high school kids. They shrunk. There's a lot of little kids around us. It's a wonderful sound. They do use the grass yard of the house, which is really wonderful. And having young kids, you forget how kids kind of, sit down and squat and look at little things when they're playing in the yard. But it's very innocent, and it's really terrific to watch them enjoying the yard and the playground and hearing those sounds. Today being a beautiful day, we also had an opportunity to see some of those exhaust fans in the windows. So that's terrific. They're in the classrooms in most of the elementary schools, and obviously in use. So that was really terrific too. I'll say it again, thanks to the community for purchasing that property, because it's another asset and we're using it to its ability. Certainly the IT department for all the work and the connectivity. John Sabalos didn't need another item to be added to his list this last year, and putting together the connectivity for the house and everything else is just one more thing that he did flawlessly along with his team. Our facilities staff, of course, they did much of the work in the renovation work. They're doing the moves. They're putting hardware together. They're assembling tables. They're tracking down things. They're painting things. They're going into rooms and sanitizing them during the school day. Really a great group of people who are working hard and working for the best interest of our students and our community. So that's really terrific, and get us ready for that reopening. Lastly, yesterday, the state passed the budget, which was really terrific. It was supposed to be passed by April 1st. So usually at this point in our budget process, as we discuss it with the board, and then as we move forward, because we're really looking for a budget adoption from the board, April 21st. That would be the next meeting for the board. And typically at a meeting like this, we've got more information for you, and we can share a little bit more information about what's happening with with the funding that we've received from the state and the new budget runs. This information that we've gotten from the state's just about 24 hours old right now. I think overall the message is very good. The state came forward with additional funds, which is great. We see about, overall from the preliminary budget, we see about $1 million increase in state aid and a $577,000 increase in federal aid. And that already, that's in addition to the $254,000 in federal aid that we had in the original budget. So as we look at it, you're looking at about $1.6 million in additional revenues. And you probably want to look at it in two ways. Half of it is federal money, which was probably not going to be recurring dollars, and the other half is increased state aid. So that federal money that we talk about, that $800,000, we know that money's not going to be recurring. And again, it's really been identified as targeted one-time money. So we want to be thoughtful and be able to bring to the board some really well thought out uses for those monies for next year's budget plan. There's also some rules behind those monies, and those rules keep coming out. They're not, and interpretations of those rules keep coming out. In some of those monies, one tranche of the money we're receiving is $577,000 connected to the American Rescue Plan. 20% of that's supposed to be identified towards learning recovery programs. So again, we want to, as we look at these additional dollars, we want to make sure we have the proper spending for those and follow any proper, any rules or caveats that are behind it. So that's kind of an unknown if there's restrictions on that spending aid. As we go through the budget too, and again, this is kind of one of those budget discussions when the board shares what your final thoughts are on, with debt service fund, with our fund balances, what would the tax increase look like? And I know we've talked about this at our budget meeting, and questions have been asked at meetings prior. We have a tax cap compliant budget this year. We have a rather large increase to our budget related to our capital project. And we're helping tamper some of that increase with the use of debt service fund, which is great, about $1.1 million. Without use of that money, you could have a tax increase closer to 5%, and that's nothing that anybody's proposing. So I want to be very clear about that. But you could actually still have a tax cap compliant budget at that level. As we move forward and we look at these new dollars, though, and I know there's sensitivities out there, I think we want to be able to provide the board with some more information, and then be able to get some feedback from you on where we want the final budget to rest prior to that April 21st budget adoption. Let's see. Other things to think about, of course, our budget-to-budget increase year over year. Our taxpayer residents will see that in our taxpayer postcard that goes out. Of course, the largest part of the driving expense of our budget, our year-to-year budget expense, is the debt service related to the capital budget. So that's not a surprise, but it's just an explanation point, and that's something to be mindful of. Again, certain things that we think about, we talk about our contingency. We maintain a 2% contingency in our budget for any potential unanticipated things that could happen during the year. And here are some things that I try to think about. I want to think about not only what's going to happen next year, and I know the board needs to think about this, but where's the district going to look 2, 3, 5 years out? And that's part of the long-range planning that we do. And as I talked about those 2 buckets of money that make up the $1.6 million that's coming from the state, we know $800,000 of it is one-time money. And that other $800,000 is really an increase in our foundation aid and our state aids. And I'm really interested in finding out what's backing that state aid. Is that money that's flowing from the federal government to the state aid as a one-time infusion of support to the state? So is that going to be an $800,000 increase that the district can count on year after year after year? Or are we going to find ourselves in another situation after 1 year when the federal money is all spent and then the state doesn't have any way to maintain that level of spending to the districts year after year? So we're hoping to find out more information like that as we move forward. As more information comes out. It's always interesting. I know Dr. Champ has even mentioned it. These rules come out. I think we talked about it with COVID. Rules come out, and then the questions pour in, and then the answers kind of come out one by one, and we learn more and more about the rules behind whether if it was COVID or the use of budget monies and those federal dollars. So we're trying to get as much information about that as we can. Other things that can happen year after year, and we haven't seen it recently, which is really fortunate, is we know our pension rates can fluctuate year to year because those are based on market conditions and how those actual pension funds perform. When you talk about taxing above at the cap or within the budget cap, you really want to think about the tax cap in 2 components. The first part of the tax cap is really the part that supports your operating budget. And that's really driven by what we read about and hear about most of the time is with CPI and that little bit of an adjustment factor. And when you tax for your operating budget, that's to pay for your salaries and the lights and things like that, and your sporting events and your class trips. When you tax, that's what the operating budget really funds. And then you have the capital budget portion, which funds your debt service, which is for the capital project. So the capital
So
budget.
Jim, just a quick question.
Yep.
So to clarify on that, just to make it super, super clear.
I'm happy to do that.
So as the budget stands now, the proposal is a 3.31% increase, right?
That's right.
And 1.7% of that is operating,
That's correct.
and 1.61% of that is debt service.
That's correct.
Right. And
Very well.
there are a lot of restrictions on what we can use to pay for debt service,
Yes.
right? So the only thing we can do is we can use our debt service reserve. And the current budget proposes that we use 1.1 million
Yes.
of a $1.748 million debt service reserve fund this year.
That's correct.
Okay, and then we cannot use any of the money that's coming from the state or the extra money that is coming from the federal government to pay down debt service.
That's correct.
Okay.
So thank you, and that clarifies it in a simple way. And those are the things that we want to be mindful of. When we look at these additional dollars, if you were to say, let's go below the tax cap number, that's an option. But then what happens is, if that state money is pulled back in a future year, then you've got a budget hole, or you've got a cliff, and you need to manage that. And you can manage that one of two ways. You can manage that by reducing your expenditures, or you can manage it by increasing your revenues. And the levers for revenues at that point generally are taxation. And you could find, the district could find itself in a position in future years, if that revenue gets pulled back, where you may have to pierce, your only option would be to pierce a cap. And that would require a 60% majority. So mechanically, those are the types of things that you want to think about, where when you have a tax cap compliant budget, you pass it with 50% of voter approval.
So I have a follow-up on Sue's question. So the 800,000 from the feds and the foundation aid, 800,000 foundation aid, or combination of state aid programs. That $800,000 from the Fed isn't really intended to support your normal operating budget. Is that correct?
That'd be accurate. I received, actually, before this meeting began, I received something from Capital Market Advisors, which I'm going to share with the board when I have a better opportunity to look at it. And it kind of shows you what you can use the monies for and what you can't use the monies for. And the expectation is that they're one-time dollars. So it's there's kind of some thought you want to put behind how you use those dollars. And like I said, 20% of it needs to be identified for recovery type of a program.
So it's not to support normal operations.
Right. I mean, exactly. I mean, it can be used to support PPE for pandemic-type expenses, learning recovery, and when we get more information, I want to be able to share that with the board exactly.
I just want the public to understand that we're getting this money, but we can't then just apply it to our normal operating expenses because there's restrictions on how it can be used.
That's right.
And it won't be there next year.
Correct.
So if we use it to reduce expenses this year, we're going to have those expenses plus whatever additional expenses in the following year.
That's correct.
So that's the cliff you refer to. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jim, oh gosh, you said be close, I was too close, or you amped me up. Jim, what would you say are the key concerns on the horizon? You've touched on some of them, but just like the things that you want us to have top of mind as we're making decisions about this year's budget
Sure.
and thinking about this new information.
Well, I mean, it's the unknowns. It's the sustainability of that state aid, and if it's backed or if it's funded, kind of with a flow through of that federal money at this point in time, I worry about the ability of the state to sustain that level of commitment year over year. Because we haven't seen that number move much in the last few years.
A decade, really.
I'd be surprised if we saw it. It's just a change from what we've been hearing. You know, we have some controls that some expenses that we can control, but like I talked about, a pension expense. You know, we belong to the TRS pension system. We have seen fluctuations of $1 million in a year. And those are the types of things that can cause some difficulty on a year-to-year basis. You've got your tax certiorari's, which is something we talk about every year. I think we all know how residential properties are going, but we also know commercial properties are you know, we've been hearing that commercial properties are having a little bit more difficulty, and you know, that's an area where we could see more exposure, and we're waiting for a final report from our tax certiorari attorney on that, on where we are with that type of exposure.
But for the budget purposes of this year's budget, Sue, I think, put it very well. 1.7 is operating increase, and 1.6 is debt service. So if we're looking at this, not wanting to, personally, not wanting to reduce our operating cap budget, the only place to look, if we were looking to reduce this increase, would be in the debt service. Is that?
That's
I mean, that's my personal take on it. Having said that, the other issue is that, you know, the debt service isn't going away. And we have a debt service reserve of 1.75, I'm going to round it up. And right now, you've already committed 1.1 of that to this year's budget.
Correct.
So after this year, we'll have 650,000 roughly. So next year, you know, we could be looking at this in a different situation. So I think it would be helpful for the board if we could get some projections on the debt service going forward, because there's offsetting revenues associated with that. We'll start getting state aid. There'll be some other things, right?
That's absolutely right. We're starting to get some state aid on projects, and then we'll be able to give you some forecasts on what the expected local share, which is what we'll have to pay from taxpayers in the next few years.
If I understood correctly, also we're going to be starting to plateau in terms of our debt, the debt cost each year, right? So in other words, it ramps up and then it plateaus. Is that accurate?
That is right, and we'll see ourselves at about that level till 28, 29 timeframe when we begin to start retiring some of that debt.
So from my own perspective, you know, if we were to look at to try and reduce this tax levy increase, it's in the debt service, from my perspective.
Right.
But I don't know what that means for next year and the year after. So I think it would be really helpful to see that.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Jim, did you say that the plateau is more like 28, 29? I couldn't hear you.
No,
I thought it
said
was 25 for some reason, stands out in
Yeah,
my mind.
we kind of hit that plateau in about 2 years.
Yeah.
And it remains fairly at a steady level, then it begins to drop. We start retiring off some debt in the 29, 30, if I remember correctly, it's the 29, 30 fiscal years is when we start doing it. Other items to think about, if you recall, you know, we're balancing this year's or the proposed budget with about $1.2 million of fund balance. You know, different ways you could do it. Basically, that means you have a structurally unbalanced budget. It's a fairly common practice, but you could also reduce your use of fund balance as a way to, again, take in that revenue from the state this year. If we have any concerns about the ability of that state aid level to maintain itself over the years.
But if we reduce it this year, we can increase it next year, right?
You could, right.
I mean, it's always a concern how much fund balance is used
It is a concern,
in each
absolutely.
budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we get a windfall from the state, we use it this year, we don't use as much fund balance it's available for use in future years.
It is available, and then if that funding does dry up at the state level after 2 years or something, you could resume back to a level where we're at right now.
Hey, Jim, can I ask a question? So when somebody's looking in the Journal News and they see the tax levies of all our neighboring school districts and stuff, they need to really look at the detail to make sure that they understand that half of our levy is from the debt service, where all of our neighbors, or a good chunk of our neighbors, are not going through school construction projects like we are, so that it doesn't make us look distorted relative to our neighbors. That's one point. Secondly, can you let everybody know, we're talking about debt service and we're reducing the debt service fund this year. How are ways to increase the debt service fund? What are ways? What are options to us? Because I know that it's very limited in the ways that you can fund. You can't take from one fund and throw it into the debt service.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. So, we talk to our internal auditors about this. We talk to our external auditors about this. We want to make sure we get it right. And their guidance to us, which we thought is accurate in the first place, was there's really two ways that your debt service fund balance can go up. One is, say you have a refunding or a borrowing and you're paid a premium at that point in time. That premium would go into your debt service fund. The other which way is, we've borrowed the money for our project, for our capital project. If at the end of the project there are unspent dollars, those unspent dollars would then go into our debt service fund. So those are really the two ways that monies would go into the debt service fund. Sure, there's interest income, but those are really small dollars on a year-to-year basis. So I guess there's three ways that you mentioned, but really two significant ways. One would be from borrowing premiums, and the other from remaining dollars of unspent project dollars, borrowed dollars. Thank you.
Well, we're in a good place here. I mean, I don't want to make this sound like a negative thing. We're in a good place. We have a debt service reserve.
Absolutely.
If we didn't, we would be at 5% increase.
You're right. We are in a good place, and fundamentally, we have discussions because, of course, the voters approve the capital bond, and it's almost like they have to approve it every year when they vote on the budget, and they vote for being able to be taxed on that portion of it.
Right.
So it's something that comes up every year.
Well, and you have people moving in and out of town. You know, we know who was around during these live discussions about the bond and who sat through our capital markets presentations and all the updates, but, you know, it's not a fixed group of residents, so, and you
You're
need to
right.
remind people as well. So each year in these budgets, we need to remember which part of it is debt versus operating budget. And I do agree with John. I think it would be helpful to get a refresher on that local share chart, you know,
Sure.
the most updated that shows where the debt service from this building starts to roll off versus where the debt from this project, you know, gets added. And in my mind's eye, it was sort of between now and like 2025 where we were going to hit that peak. We've always talked about using the kind of debt service that you've spoken about for this budget with 1.1 to help smooth that curve so that the local share impact isn't as immense. But we have to be very careful about how we smooth that out because we want to be in a position to smooth it over a few years' time. But I think it's been a little while, so it'd be helpful that we could get that in a board packet.
Yeah,
you know,
I'd be
update of
happy.
some
Yeah,
kind.
absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. And you're exactly right. When we've been talking about this project since the inception, since the feasibility time points, when we brought capital markets in, that's really what we talked about and how we wanted to use that debt service fund, because we didn't want to really have a huge year where there's a big spike.
Yeah.
And sure, everybody knew there was going to be an increase, but we really wanted to graduate it in a level that kind of smoothed it out, or kind of give you rolling hills versus peaks, really, really high peaks. And as was mentioned earlier, you're not going to find another school district like ours that's building a school right now. This is certainly it's a big project that the community took on, and with it, of course, we see what the impact is. And that's probably why we're not seeing those increases with those other communities. But you're right, when you see those tax increases and you compare it, you really want to look at what makes up that increase? How much of it is your operating and how much is really to make up the capital portion of your budget?
Unfortunately, that's not the headline.
No,
So,
that
Yeah.
doesn't sell.
so I mean, it's no secret. I've shared with you my preference to see a tax increase with a 2 in front of it. But I don't want to, having done that, then, next year be trying to explain why we have a 4 in front of it.
Right.
So that's why, that's my preference, but, we have to be cognizant of what happens going forward.
Thank you. I mean, that's good for us to hear, because when we go back and we get more information and we can try to run different scenarios, that's very helpful for us.
I may be the only
You're
one that thinks
You're
that.
No,
Well,
John, I
think-
agree with you.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to be as aggressive as we possibly can, but be really, really clear about the trade-offs. There will be trade-offs, right? So we will have debt service in the foreseeable years. That is not going away. And we're getting incredible things out of it. We have fields. We're getting a brand-new elementary school that's opening soon. But there are always trade-offs. So if we use more of it this year, there's less smoothing in the out years.
Yeah, I think it would be really, really helpful to see where we stand and with what we've planned right now, which is based on what our assumptions were when we started the bond project, and how, if we start to play with it today for this year, what that means next year. Because just like we're trying to compare ourselves to other districts, we need to look at the years too. There's 2 different things that we're comparing here, like understanding the 2 parts of the budget in relation to how what we're doing in our district versus other districts, and then also seeing what we can control and how that curve will work. Because I agree with what John's been saying, and Vinny and Sue are saying about looking at this and understanding what levers we can pull to get where we want to be, and that make sure that the community understands why we're doing it and what it means for them next year too, and the year after.
Certainly one of those decisions where our board's decisions impact future boards. So
Exactly.
we want to be careful and thoughtful.
Exactly, and I think what the tax cap forces boards to think a little bit more about the long-term financial stewardship. And the Office of State Comptroller, that's why they encourage your long-term planning. But those are those things that you really, you probably have to think about more as a board today than you did prior to the tax cap timepiece. Because if you're going above that level today, you need that 60% supermajority. It's a higher bar. So it's another dimension out there, and I'm sure your pay reflects that.
I think given our need to get some more information around this and to come back to you with some additional options and moves to consider, and knowing that we've got to set a budget on the 21st, we would actually recommend, if possible, that we could hold a special meeting next week, just to come back, do some research and come back to you with options before you have to make a decision and firmly set that. I would also add, unfortunately, there's athletic programs scheduled in here that night, so I would recommend a virtual meeting if possible. Just wanted to toss that out and see if the board was okay with that.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It seems like all this information just landed in your lap. Like last night, I got the
Not
text.
even 24 hours.
Yeah, I got the text message when it hit from, I think Amy Paulin sent it.
Yep.
And you haven't even had time to digest it. I'm sure it's been processing through your offices all day. So there's clearly a lot of information that you need to give us that we need time.
I would say one of the webinars from my group, for the business officials group, isn't until next Wednesday.
Wow.
On how to break it down, because there's a lot of questions.
So we're talking about a special meeting next Wednesday, or?
That's what we were thinking
When
next
we have more
Wednesday.
information.
But that's a virtual meeting.
Yeah.
But if they were, I mean, don't all school districts have to adopt their budgets by the 21st? So if they're not even having webinars about unpacking this information until next Wednesday?
Why should this be any
I know,
different
I
than the
mean,
whole
this is
last
like
year?
the storyline of the last 13, 14 months, but, okay.
We're a week late with adoption, basically. I mean, you had and April 1st was your state deadline, so we're behind a week with that state adoption.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it puts us. That's
Yeah.
why it puts us at this point,
Yeah.
where normally again, in the last few years when I've been here, we've been able to kind of lock it in at this point in time.
But knowing you, Jim, you don't need a webinar to unpack this. You'll get going.
We'll do everything we can. You have our commitment to do that.
We'll get some information from you next Wednesday. Okay.
Jim, I have one more information ask, if you don't mind. To Vinny's point about other districts, although I know it's not super relevant given the unique position that we're in paying for a new school, if we could just see what our neighboring districts are, what their updated figures are as well for what they're going to be going out to the community with, that would be helpful.
Sure, absolutely. And we've
I
got
know
we've got a good group.
Yeah.
We got
The school boards usually puts that out on a weekly basis to the districts. I don't know if that comes directly to you or if that
No.
just comes to us.
I know
Just
we
go through
have
it.
seen it,
Okay,
but
yeah,
I was
we
just wondering
We
if
could
there's,
definitely get that for you.
if other areas are also updating their figures.
Yeah, I mean, I last one I saw, maybe only half the districts had reported.
Yeah.
Okay, we
So
can
it was-
definitely get that for you.
I don't think we've seen one since then.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think they send it out weekly. Is School Board Association will
So
send
maybe
it out
where we
weekly.
are is a Friday weekly update,
Yeah.
and then we have
Yes.
time to digest that in the
Yeah, that would
context
be
of
really great.
Wednesday's discussion.
You got it.
And again, there's a tight group of business officials that share information. As we learn more, we push it out to one another, so that helps as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always on our toes.
That's right.
Okay, we're done. So this brings us to section 5, which is financial reports and motions. I'd like to take a consent of 5.1 through 5.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Vinny. Thanks, Sue. Are there any questions or comments or additions to make?
I think I wanted to highlight one thing, but my board doc shut down.
The calendar?
Yes, thank you. You do see the, this year's school calendar back up for revision tonight. Just when, you think you got everything figured out, new memo comes out from the state. So in light of the fact that they've canceled some of the Regents exams, they also then adjusted the Regents exam schedule in June. And so that has implications for the 180-day calendar requirement, attendance reporting, et cetera. Normal rule is when there's a Regents exam at grades 7 through 8, if there's a Regents exam in the building, then all students are excused. Only those who are taking the exam have to report, and everyone gets credit for a full day of attendance. Since now the exams are down to only 4 days instead of the normal 7-8 day period, they've adjusted it. So the calendar shows that adjustment tonight. So that means it's going to be a little tricky, a little speed bumpy, I think is the phrase that Dr. Garcia used earlier today, which I thought was pretty appropriate. Instead of the last day of classes at the middle school and high school for 7th through 12th grade being the 15th of June, it's going to be a little wonky. There will now be a regular instructional day on the 16th. There will be the English Regents exam on the 17th, so we're working out exactly how we want to handle that, but potentially no students 7 through 12 on the 17th. But there's no exams on the 18th or the 21st, so those are technically now need to be instruction days. So we will be talking through that with the administrators to figure out best approach to make the best use of those days. And then exams will be held the 22nd through the 25th. So a little start, stop action there, but just wanted to get that up for approval so that we could get that communicated out and updated, and we will be working on plans as to how those days will run. And that does not affect the elementaries.
And was Juneteenth an addition to next year's calendar, or I thought for some reason
So
I thought-
Juneteenth, my understanding of it is in state regulations. The way that the regulations are written is if it falls on a Saturday, you can observe it on Friday, but you're not required to. If it falls on Sunday, you are required to honor it observed on Monday. So that's why in our calendar for next year, it
Next
falls
year.
on Sunday. We're observing it on Monday. It's a holiday. This year, being that it wasn't a scheduled holiday and it falls on the Saturday, we don't. It was approved as one of the 185 days of
Okay.
our contract, of our 100 days of the school calendar, 185 days of the work contract. So we did not designate that as a holiday for this year, given that it's a day of payroll that's already part of the collective bargaining contracts.
Okay. So when we saw that on the calendar, it was for next year?
It's for next year.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, this brings us to section 6, which is policy monitoring and governance. 6.1 is the second reading of policy 5633, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms. Eileen?
Yep, nothing has changed since the first reading, so same deal.
The policy committee did meet.
We met, it was such a great day. But we didn't talk about this.
Okay.
Anything?
Oh, I do think just one point of information. I thought, I know that Julia has at the next wellness meeting,
Tomorrow.
a student scheduled to make a presentation about gender neutral bathrooms.
I'm coming.
So
Tomorrow.
it's kind of an
Tomorrow.
exciting.
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
No, that's great.
There was a discussion, though, about location of them in the schools.
That's
and
a-
also, that's what it is.
I think
Okay.
that's what the student's going to be speaking to.
And then there was some question about Hutchinson, the new building. Do we have any more information on that? Somebody was asking.
Yeah, I don't remember. Did we identify if
them
there
in
were
the-
single-use bathrooms at Hutchinson?
I'm sorry, we did. I know Julie and I talked about where the construction at the high school, where we may be able to
Okay.
get a general use bathroom with the construction. That was, we spent some time on that, and we think there may be a spot where the administration's offices are right now by Dr. Garzia's
Wait, in the
office.
high school, or we're talking about
In the
Hutchinson?
high
That's-
school.
The focus was the high school because.
Yeah.
Right, but in,
In Hutchinson, we got to check, I'm sorry.
We'll go for another tour.
Well,
We
they
didn't-
were-
we didn't
they
get to
were
it on the to-do
Part of
list.
our tour. I
Yeah.
can't tell you exactly where they were, but they were definitely part of the tour.
we talked about it during the tour,
Right.
while we were standing in front of it, so I believe there's at least one, if,
I believe so too. We just didn't get to it on the to-do list.
I was
One
just
in the
curious.
nurse's office.
There are other,
and the second policy, oh, sorry.
so any other questions or comment? Okay, so 6.2 is policy 7330, searches and questioning of students. It's first reading.
So this one, it's a policy that we had initially addressed, I feel like it was in the fall, maybe. We went through 2 readings, and then we realized we weren't comfortable with the direction it was going, so we stopped. We brought it back to the committee. We incorporated some more insights from NYU Metro that were relevant to us, and basically the changes that we made I think are pretty well summarized by saying that we just looked at the policy and made sure that we wanted it to say what we intended, which was that searches and questionings should be handled with the most sensitivity to the student, and to put the student sort of in the center of that. So obviously, these are never great situations when this has to happen, but we wanted to make it as comfortable and as private as possible for the students involved. So we went back and changed some language. We much more explicitly talked about strip searches and how they are absolutely never acceptable. We will never do a strip search. And that wasn't totally explicit the first time around. So those are that's the kind of change we made, but I'm sure that you've had a chance to read it. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I only have a quick comment that this is the first reading, and I feel like this is a policy that we should not waive any of the readings, because I
Agreed.
feel like everybody needs time to
Absolutely.
absorb this, and if there's any public comment, we should hear it.
Yeah, and we could have just gone to the third reading, but we decided to go back to the first reading,
Yeah.
and I think that was a better choice.
So there's a marked up version here, right?
Yeah, but I think there were so many marked up versions. Hold on, sorry.
I'm having trouble opening the attachments. I don't know if it's
Oh,
just my
really?
computer.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
So
I think it's the file.
the marked up
format.
version is not that marked up.
That's why I asked.
Yes, because we had so many changes along the way that it got very cumbersome. We can definitely, right, Pauline?
So this,
Do we
I
still
think,
have it?
this version was mostly, the most recent version that we were talking about at the meeting was mostly just editing. That we had substantive conversations, but the most recent edited version were merely like,
Right, but the.
Typographical
That's
edits.
true, but since the last board meeting.
since
there
the
were
last board meeting, there were
changes.
substantive changes.
That's what I meant.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was trying to see what they were, like,
I can
It's
send
not
around,
uploading for some reason.
Yeah, right.
yeah, I think that that's just, I don't know why that is, to be honest.
Yeah, Pauline can send that around to the board
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That'd be
something having to do
helpful
with
Where we
the
were
before the next
before.
meeting.
That's fine,
Yeah.
thank you.
We had so many changes to it
Yeah.
from where we started in the fall that it was almost impossible to read.
No, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
And is this one that, it's an old policy that you're updating? And it comes through the BOCES service to be identified as needing change, or you're identifying it as you're cycling
This is
through?
one that actually Janine Clark asked us to revise a year ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And because it is one that, and as I said, unfortunately, there were just our times where, in the course of running the schools, that you have to deal with questioning in particular and searches. So it had been requested by the administration for update.
okay. No, that's
The-
helpful to know.
Initially, the changes that we made based on Janine's input were related to, the previous policy didn't address school trips so clearly that, what's a search when you're on a trip? Who does that search? Who's on the trip, that kind of thing?
Sports, athletics.
Sports, yeah, the buses. It was much more about being in the school, and we know that, things come up when they're not in school. So that was the initial updating. And then since then, there's just been a lot of conversation about, what the tone should be and what do we really mean, and making it just incredibly more clear.
It's great. It's just helpful to know why we're discussing it.
It was also very helpful to have the conversations with the administrators who may actually use the policy, to hear from them what would be something that would happen or wouldn't happen. That helped a lot to inform the conversation.
Thank you. Okay, so this brings us to section 7, which is superintendent's personnel recommendations. I'd like to take a consent at 7.1 through 7.3. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Was that you, Leah? It's quiet. Jess, was that you? Okay. Any questions or comments or additions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 8 is pupil personnel services. We have a Schedule D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Vin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 9 is new business. Do we have any new business? Okay. Section 10 is communications and comments from the public. We have a member of the public. Are you here to make public comment or just to listen? Okay, very good. So this brings us to section 11, which is Ms. Miller's section.
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Leah. Everybody was fighting for that second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, have a good night. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.